Hello, today I'm going to look at a game from 1982 from Fantasy Games Unlimited, Star Explorer, designed by Leonard H. Canterman, Douglas Bunfort. So this is my look at the rules of Star Explorer. In the first video, part 1, I looked at the review and play. Hopefully this look at the rules is of use to you. Going through the rules here, general course of play. Each player represents the captain of a starship. Starting at the central home starbase, each player must visit each of the planets and return to the starbase as quickly as possible. On each planet, the player will conduct an exploration. Successful encounters are the main method of earning victory points and ultimately winning. At the start of the game, each player will equip his vessel within certain limits as he best sees fit to accomplish his mission. Once equipped, the player will move his ship through space towards the various planets. Upon arriving at each planet, the player will choose some of his crew team to send down to the planet as a landing party. The landing party will have several encounters on each planet. Throughout the game, the player's ship will be expending energy for various functions. The player should also keep track of how much damage his ship sustains in the various encounters, especially combat. If the ship sustains maximum damage, it is destroyed and the player loses. Turn sequencing. When playing with more than one player, the sequence in which players will take their turns is determined each turn. Players must keep a running total of victory points on a ship's log sheet. Player with the lowest running total of victory points moves first that turn. Sequence of play. Game start sequence. Planetary placement. Roll for location of each planet. Roll for missions for certain planets on the mission table. One planet will have a mission for each player of the game. Ship preparation. Done by each player in secret. Assign standard components. Assign crew teams. Allot bonus resource points as teams. Ship components. Energy or armor. All ships start from the home starbase. Player turn sequence. Determine player sequence based on VP totals. Player chooses one of the two options, stellar movement or planetary exploration. Option 1, stellar movement. Move hex by hex. In each hex, roll 1d6 and see if an encounter occurs. Roll 1 to 5 means no encounter. Continuing movement. Roll 6 means an encounter has taken place. Roll 1d20 to determine which encounter in the stellar encounter table. Resolve encounter and, if possible, continue movement after the encounter is resolved until entire movement for the turn is used up. Option 2, planetary exploration. First turn, special routine. The first player to visit a planet, roll 1d10 on the environment table to determine planetary movement. Choose teams to be sent in the initial landing party up to the limit set by the teleporters. Roll on the planetary encounter tables to determine encounters. If the planet has a mission pre-assigned to it, determine 2 encounters. If the planet had no assigned mission, determine 3 encounters. Assign teams to the encounters, placing the team encounters on the planetary display. Resolve encounters. Resolve all disease and disaster encounters first, as these may affect the activities of other teams on the planet. Other encounters may be resolved in any order desired. In general, each encounter will call for 2 sets of the die rolls to be made. The first will determine whether the player's efforts were successful. The second will determine what losses the investigating team sustains. Subsequent turns. Reinforcement and or substitution teams to maximum teleporter limit in several types of encounters. The chance for success increases with each successive turn spent on the encounter. Setup for play, planet locations. In a standard scenario, 4 planets are placed on the map. Note there may be other star systems present in the sector, but only Earth-like ones are placed on the map. Planetary placement is determined randomly to assure variety between games. The location of each planet is determined as follows. First, the distance of each planet from the central home starbase is determined by rolling 1d6. in adding 5 to the result to determine the number of hexes used from Starbase. Next, the direction of each planet from Starbase is determined. The player rolls 1d6 and locates the planet in the hex row indicated by the scatter diagram around the home Starbase. The planet is then placed. If that roll calls for the planets to be two planets to be in the same hex, roll again. Optional roll for a longer, somewhat more challenging game is recommended that 5 or 6 planets be placed. In general, a player should allow an additional 5 turns to the time limit for each additional planet placed on the map board. Certain of the planets will have predetermined missions for the player to resolve. These missions will have the highest victory point value of any encounters in the game, 15 VPs. A number of planets equal to the number of players in the game are given missions. The first placed planets are given the missions, which are determined by rolling 1d20, consulting the mission chart. The mission of each planet should be noted on the planetary record log. There are 2 types of missions on the table: disturbances on a colony world or investigation of unusual activity. Note the team type listed by each disturbance is a team which will provide a bonus when attempting to resolve that particular disturbance. Optional rule: the environment of planets with an assigned mission may be determined by rolling 1d10 and consulting the planetary environment table. Ship's components. A ship consists of 5 components: engines, teleporters, shields, missiles, and beams. Ships are also rated for maximum damage, armor, and initial energy reserved. Each ship is equipped with a standard number of each component, standard damage, and standard energy ratings. However, before commencing play, each player is allowed to upgrade his ship with 5 bonus resource points. These may be assigned to allow additional ship component damage or energy ratings, to allow additional ship components damage or energy ratings, or additional crew teams. The method for allocating bonus resource points is explained below. Engines. Ships have a standard 6 engines. The maximum speed in hexes a player may choose for a ship is equal to the number of engines. Teleporters. Ships have a standard 6 teleporters. Maximum number of teams at which a player may send to a planet is equal to the number of teleporters. Shields. Ships have a standard 3 shields. Shields may be activated during stellar movement and or combat at a certain energy cost to help absorb damage to the ship by stellar encounters or in stellar combat. Missiles. Ships have a standard 1 missile launching section. Missiles are shorter range than beams but cause greater damage with each hit. Beams have a standard 1 beam section. Beams are longer ranged and tend to be more accurate than missiles. Maximum damage armor. Ships start with a standard 100 points of maximum damage, and a ship has suffered damage equal to maximum damage rating is destroyed and the player has lost the game. Ship damage can be repaired either in space or at home Starbase. Energy. Ships start with a standard 100 energy unit reserve. Energy units are expended to allow for stellar movement, to power the shields and weapon systems during stellar combat and during special encounter situations. Players must keep track of their energy expenditures and reserves on the ship's log sheet. When a ship has expended its entire energy reserve, the player has lost the game. Additional energy may be obtained during the game by prospecting for fuel on the surface of planets or in asteroid belts, by trading with merchant vessels encountered, or by returning to the home Starbase. Ship's components may be damaged as a result of critical hits obtained during stellar combat or other encounters. The number of functional units of each type should be kept track of on the ship's log record. Ship's crew. The ship is manned by crew members. By crew teams, there are 10 different types of crew teams. Each team consists of a number of individuals and all necessary equipment. The players need to only keep track of the number of teams for each type and their assignments. The players should use the crew team counters for this purpose. And the types are navigation, fire control, damage control, geology, fuel engineers, botany, animal physiology, setting contact, medical, and military. The player's ship has a standard 25 crew teams total, which taken as follows. The player must take 7 military teams. He must take at least 1 team of each of the other 9 specialty types, and he may choose the remaining 9 team types freely. The player may also obtain additional crew teams by means of his bonus resource points. The crew types to be chosen are determined by the player after he has determined what the missions will be for those planets with pre-assigned missions in the game. Bonus resource points. Players have an additional 5 resource points to improve their ship's capabilities as they see fit. Each player determines what they obtain with the bonus resource points secretly. 1 resource point may be exchanged for any one of the following: 1 ship's component, engine, teleporter, shield, beam, or missile. 1 crew team of any type. 25 additional energy units of fuel reserve. 25 additional armor points for maximum damage. The player may expend his bonus resource points in any mixture or combination he desires. Players are allowed to spend all 5 bonus points for the same item if they so desire. Interstellar movement and encounters. At the start of each of his turns, the player must determine whether or not he wishes to perform interstellar movements or remain on the X he currently occupies and perform planetary exploration. Interstellar movement is employed to move between planetary systems, consuming energy from the ship's fuel reserve. Each turn that a player wishes to use interstellar movement, he must choose the ship's speed for the turn before actually moving. The ship must be moved a number of hexes equal to the chosen speed, unless encounters in space prevent this being possible. The maximum speed a player is allowed to choose is equal to the number of engines on a ship. In the game, the maximum possible speed would be 11 if a player had 11 engines on a ship, 6 engines standard plus 5 engines from his total bonus resource points. The energy cost for movement depends upon the ship's speed. So in the chart, speed 1 is energy cost 1, up to speed 11, energy cost 21. A player moves his ship 1 hex at a time. For each hex entered, the player must determine if a space encounter has occurred. He rolls 1d6 and roll 1 to 5, nothing has happened. He may continue moving and roll 6, a space encounter has occurred. The player then rolls a 1d20 and consults the space encounter table below to see which encounter occurs. The player immediately resolves the encounter and may then continue moving if possible. So space encounter table here. Stellar encounters, hazards of space. 4 of the 5 stellar encounters are hazards of space: cloud, asteroid belt, radiation storm, and gravity well. When a hazard of space is encountered, its location is marked on the map by the placement of the appropriate counter in the hex. Should any ship ever enter that hex, again, the hazard will be automatically encountered and no encounter die roll is made. Hazard encounters are resolved only when a hex is entered. The encounter need not be checked again if the ship remains in the hex and leaves on a later turn. Cloud. Interstellar dust cloud interferes with the ship's navigation. The player must roll greater than or equal to a ship's current speed on 2d6 to pass through the cloud successfully and keep moving that turn. If he rolls less than his ship's current speed, the ship is lost in the cloud. It must cease all movement for that turn. He may proceed normally in the next turn. The player may add 1 to his die roll to each navigation team in his crew. For each navigation team in his crew. Asteroid Belt. A player has a choice of stopping or passing through. If he stops, he risks no damage and may in a subsequent turn prospect for fuel in the asteroid belt. See fuel prospecting. If the player wishes to pass through the belt and keep moving that turn, he must make a safety roll to see if the ship sustains damage during its passage. The player must roll greater than or equal to his ship's current speed on 2d6 to pass through safely. If it rolls less than the ship's current speed, the ship has been damaged. The player may add 1 to his die roll for each navigation team in his crew. To determine damage, the player rolls 2d6 and multiplies the result by 10 for the number of damage points sustained. A die roll of 2, 3, 11, or 12 for damage indicates a critical hit to one of his ship's components has occurred. Roll 7 or 8 indicates crew team lost. Before making a safety roll, a player may activate any or all of his ship's shields at an energy cost of 1 energy unit per shield to try to protect the ship against a possible damage if he fails to the safety roll. For each shield activated, 10 damage points are negated. Radiation storm. A ship may sustain crew team losses when passing through a radiation storm due to radiation sickness. A player rolls 1d10 to determine the number of crew teams that sustain losses. Before making this roll, the player may activate any or all of the ship's shields as it costs 1 energy unit per shield to try to protect the crew. Each shield activated prevents 1 crew team from loss. The player may also subtract 1 from the die roll for each damage control team and his crew. Crew team losses are explained in the section on Interstellar Combat. Gravity well. Gravity wells drag ships off course proportional to the ship's speed. The player has a choice. He may either cease movement for that turn and proceed normally the next turn, or pay energy cost equal in units to the energy to the ship's current speed to make course corrections and continue moving that turn. Stellar encounter traders. Player may encounter merchants trading vessels as a result of the encounter. The player may purchase trade for any or all of the following in one encounter: merchandise. Crew teams. A player may purchase 1 crew from any type, at a cost of 35 energy units per team. Ship's components. The player may purchase any one ship's component: engine, shield, missile, beam, or teleporter at a cost of 35 energy units. Energy. The player may trade any number of crew teams for energy units at the ratio of 15 energy units for each crew team exchanged in this fashion. Stellar maps. The player may purchase 1 stellar map at a cost of 5 energy units. The stellar map may be used to help alleviate the effects of the hazardous space which may be encountered as follows. Cloud. Roll 3d6 rather than 2d6 to pass through safely. Asteroid Belt. As for Cloud, roll 3d6 rather than 2d6. Gravity Well. Pay only half the usual cost to continue moving. Radiation Storm. Roll 1d6 rather than 1d10 for crew losses. A player may have in his possession no more than 1 stellar map at a time. When he uses a stellar map to assist his crew, and an encounter is expended, he may purchase another map on a subsequent turn. Planetary map. A player may purchase planetary map for each planetary mission system in the game at a cost of 5 energy units each. A planetary map helps the player only when prospecting for fuel. A player with planetary map for a given prospect may add 3 to his die roll when prospecting for fuel. One of the major events that may occur is a new tax on traders. This will increase all prices except for the exchange of crew for energy units by an amount equal to 1d10 times 10%. Stellar encounters pirates. Players may encounter pirate vessels as stellar encounters. Pirates are the scourges of galactic commerce, and it is considered standard, although a subsidiary ship's mission to rid the star lanes of these pirates. Pirate vessels are non-standard. Exact ship's components are determined at the moment of contact. A pirate vessel has 1/2 times d6 beams and 1/2 times d6 missiles. Pirate vessel has a maximum damage of 1d10 plus 5, that quantity times 10 damage points. When a pirate vessel is contacted, the player has 3 options from which to choose. He may run, he may attempt to bribe, or he may fight the pirate. Run. The player picks his speed from 2 to 12. He may pick any speed regardless of how many engines his ship has, and pays an amount of energy equal to the speed chosen. He then rolls 2d6. If the roll is less than or equal to the speed chosen, he has escaped. If the roll is greater than the speed chosen, he has failed to escape and must proceed to combat. The player may subtract 1 from his die roll for each navigation team in his crew. No actual movement takes place when escape. Ship remains in the same hex, may proceed with movement normally for the remainder of the turn. The vessel in this case uses overdrive. When a ship uses overdrive to attempt to escape, there's a chance of damage to the engines. If the escape die roll was a 2 or a 12, engine damage has occurred. The player then rolls 1d6 to determine the number of engines incapacitated. As is usually a standard mission to fight the pirates, the player loses 25 VPs if he runs from the pirates without combat. Bribe. The player may offer from 10 to 50 energy units as a bribe to the pirates. The player chooses the amount he wishes to offer. The roll is 1d6, multiplies the result by 10 to determine the pirate's demand. If the bribe offered is equal to or greater than the demand, the pirates let the ship proceed. If the bribe was inadequate, combat ensues. The pirate takes the entire bribe, offered regardless of the roll for their demand. They take the bribe even if it was inadequate, combat ensues. The energy units offered as a bribe are always lost. There is no VP lost for bribing the pirates. Combat. The player may engage the pirate vessel in space combat. This will be the usual option chosen. See space combat for the procedure. If the combat is proceeding unfavorably, the player may choose to try to run after any round of combat using the overdrive procedure discussed above. The player must take a VP loss as follows for running, depending on how many rounds of combat have occurred. And like in the table, it's after 1 round of combat minus 20 VPs, after 5 rounds, no VP loss. If the player defeats the pirate vessel in space combat, he gains 10 victory points. Still encounters an enemy vessel. Players may encounter a vessel belonging to the Zengids, the Confederacy's enemy with whom an uneasy truce is in force. There are 3 possible classes of enemy vessels: battlecruiser, battleship, and dreadnought, with the ship's components standardized as follows: battlecruiser, 1 beam, 1 missile, 100 points damage maximum. Battleship, 2 beams, 3 missiles, 2 beams, 2 missiles, 150 points damage. Dreadnought, 3 beams, 3 missiles, 200 points maximum damage. When a player encounters an enemy vessel, he has 3 choices. He may run, he may parley, or he may engage in combat and run. The player may attempt to escape using the previous mechanism discussed. Running results in a loss of 25 VPs. Parley, a player may attempt to parley with an enemy to continue the truce locally. The chance for success depends on the class of the enemy ship. A more powerful enemy ship is apt to be less reasonable than a smaller ship. The player must roll greater than or equal to the score below on 1d10 to parley successfully. He may add 1 to his die roll for each sentient contact team and his crew. Enemy battlecruiser, 9 or higher, score 5 VPs. Down to enemy dreadnoughts, 13 or higher, score 15 VPs. If the parley fails, combat ensues at a closer range than normally for space combat. Combat. Player may engage the enemy vessel in combat. If the combat is proceeding unfavorably for the player, he may escape using the overdrive procedure. The player must take a VP loss for running as follows, depending on the number of rounds. So from after 1 round, minus 20 VPs up to after 5 rounds, no VP loss. If the enemy vessel is defeated in combat, the player gains VPs as follows: battlecruiser 5 VPs up to dreadnought 15 VPs. Space combat. Space combat is resolved using space combat display on the map board. The player controls the action of his own ship. The enemy vessel, pirate or Zangid, follows certain automatic actions. The space combat display reflects the range between the opposing ships. Range is the only consideration that affects combat resolution. Each box in display equals 50,000 kilometers. At the start of the combat situation, the player places an appropriate enemy ship counter in the enemy ship start box adjacent to 10 range checks, unless combat is occurring after a failed parley with a Zagin warship. In that case, the Zagin warship is placed in the 7 box instead. Space combat is resolved in rounds. As many rounds are resolved as are necessary to decide combat. Combat is decided when one of the ships involved is destroyed or forced to break off, or if the player decides to save his ship, have his ship attempt escape. All combat runs occur during the same segment of the player's turn. The encounter hex. The player may resume movement after the combat situation is resolved. Space combat round consists of a movement segment and a combat segment. The enemy vessel will always move 1 box closer to the enemy ship until the range is reduced to 1. The player has the option of further closing the range by moving the enemy ship counter 1 additional box closer to the combat display. The player's ship is represented by a diagram, and the display is never moved. The range may never be increased once combat has begun. Following movement, the combat segment occurs. At the start of each combat segment, the player must decide how many of his ship's shields he will activate for that round at a cost of 1 energy unit per shield per round. Any or all shields may be activated each round, however, the energy cost must be paid each round. Shields will help reduce damage from enemy fire. Enemy ships have no shields. The player must decide how many missiles and or beam weapons he will fire that round, an energy cost of 1 energy unit per weapon per round. The player may fire any or all weapons each round. Energy cost need not be kept track of for the enemy ship. All weapon firing is assumed to be simultaneous for damage purposes. The chance to hit an opposing ship depends on the range, as below. Chart here. One d20 is rolled for each weapon being fired. If the roll is greater than or equal to the number indicated on the space combat table for the weapon at the given range, the opposing ship has been hit. Damage is then determined. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each fire control team he has in his crew for each roll. Enemy vessels never have this bonus. Damage: if a weapon hits, damage is determined. For beam weapons, roll 2d6 and multiply 3 for the number of damage points. For missile weapons, roll 2d6 and multiply by 5. Critical hits: if the damage die roll is 2, 3, 11, or 12, a critical hit against one of the ship's components has been obtained. The player rolls 1 6-sided die, checks the critical hits table to, shown right here, to determine which component has been damaged. That component will be unusable until repaired. Crew hits: if the damage die roll is 7 or 8, a crew team has sustained loss from the hit. 1 10-sided die is rolled to determine randomly the crew team type which suffers the loss based on the crew team random number. If there is no team of that type indicated to lose, the die is rolled again. 1 6-sided dice is then rolled to determine the extent of the loss of the team. On die roll of 1, the crew team is eliminated. Roll of 2 to 6, the team is incapacitated and cannot be used for that many turns. The number rolled. Crew team counter should be placed on the turn record track of the star log to indicate when it will again be available for use. Note that the damage, critical hit, and crew hit rules also apply for losses caused by interstellar encounters. Shields: each shield activated negates 10 damage points that would have been incurred. Shields have no effect on critical hits or crew hits, even if all damage points have been negated. If a ship suffers 100% of its allowable maximum damage, it is destroyed. However, as space vessels are very expensive, Space Combat Doctrine holds that the ship must break off combat and attempt to escape when it has sustained 75% damage at the end of any combat round. This 75% break-off rule applies to both enemy vessels as well as player ships. When an enemy ship breaks off, it automatically succeeds. The combat ends. The player earns the appropriate VPs and play continues. If the player chooses to break off, either voluntarily because the combat is proceeding unfavorably, or is forced to do so at the 75% damage level, he must do so using the overdrive escape procedure. He must choose a speed of at least 7 for overdrive when escaping. The player must take a VP loss for breaking off combat based on the number of rounds of combat fought. If both the player ship and the enemy ships are forced to break off combat after the same round of combat, there is no VP loss or gain. If the player ship is destroyed, he is out of the game and loses all VPs. Then Stellar Encounters. Stellar Encounter major events. When a 20 is rolled on the Stellar Encounter table, a major event has occurred. The player rolls on the major event table below, shown here. For instance, disturbance on home base, directional equipment malfunction down to, increased trader activity. A lot of options in between. And disturbance. A disturbance has occurred at home starbase. Players return to the Starbase as soon as possible to resolve the disturbance. All players lose 2 VPs per turn until the disturbance is resolved. The same mechanism for resolving a disturbance on a colony is used. See Planetary Encounters. The player resolving the disturbance earns a bonus 15 VPs. New text on traders. Prices on trader goods are raised by 1d10 times 10% for all players for the remainder of the game. Increased tension with Zengids. If an enemy vessel is encountered and the player wishes to parlay, he must subtract 5 from his parlay die roll. This applies to all players for the remainder of the game. Increased Zengid rating. Whenever a player is rolling to see if a stellar encounter occurs during the movement portion of his turn, a die roll of 1 indicates possible contact with a Zengid vessel. The die is re-rolled as follows: 1. Battlecruiser, 2. Battleship, 3. Dreadnought, 4, 5, 6. False report. No enemy vessel in sector. 6. Increased pirate rating. Whenever a player is rolling for an encounter during movement, a die roll of 2 indicates possible contact with pirates. The die is then rolled again as follows: 1 to 3. Pirates. Contacted 4 to 6. False report. No pirates in sector. Again, all these scenarios apply to the stellar encounter major events. Increased trader activity. Whenever a player is rolling for interstellar encounter during movement, a die roll 3 indicates possible encounter with the trader. 6 die is rolled, or a roll of 1 to 3. Trader contacted. 4 to 6. False report. No traders in sector. 3 major events which affect the stellar encounter roll: increased Zengid rating, increased pirate rating, increased trader activity may occur collectively in the same game, in addition to the usual stellar encounter on die roll 6. Damage repair. When a ship sustains damage as a result of space combat or other stellar encounters, the player may wish to repair the damage. If a player wishes to repair damage in space, he must spend an entire turn doing so, without moving and without performing any planetary exploration. General damage. Repair of accumulated damage points is performed through the expenditure of energy units. For each 1 energy unit expended, 2 damage points may be removed. The total of general damage points that may be removed is in one turn. It's determined as follows: player rolls 1d6, multiplies the result by 10 for the maximum damage to be repaired for that turn. If the player wishes to repair more than by the roll, he may spend an additional turn rolling again for a repair allowed that turn. Damage. Control teams may help repair damage. For each damage control team assigned to repair for general damage, the player may add 1 to his die roll for repair allowed. Critical hit damage. Damage control teams are the only means available to repair critical hit damage to ship components. During a repair turn, each damage control team may be assigned to either general damage repair, as above, or to repair a specific critical hit. Each damage control team was assigned to repair a critical hit. Allows the player to roll 1d6 to see if the damage succeeds. On 1 to 3, the repair succeeds. The component returns to normal function. On a 4 to 6, repair fails, but the player may try again to repair another repair turn. More than 1 damage control team may be assigned to repair a given critical hit or to general damage repair, but all assignments must be made before any dice are rolled. Return to Starbase. During the course of play, the player may be called upon to return to Starbase to resolve a disturbance, or he may choose to return to Starbase. If a player is at Starbase and is not resolving a disturbance, he may choose to repair or restock his ship. If the ship remains at the base for an entire turn, he may perform any one of the following 4 functions. General damage repair. General damage may be repaired at no energy cost. The player rolls the usual 1d6 and adds 1 for each available damage control team, multiplies by 10 to see how many damage points are repaired. Critical hit repair. 1 critically hit ship component may be repaired. This is the only way that a ship without damage control teams can repair a critical hit. Refueling. The ship may refuel with 25 additional energy units. Crew requisition. The player may obtain 1 crew team of any type. A player is allowed to remain at Starbase at the start of the game to requisition additional fuel and or crew teams if so desired. Planetary exploration, planetary encounters. When a player ship arrives at a planet, the players will send teams from the ship's crew down to the planet to explore it as well as resolve any mission on the planet. When the first player in a particular game arrives at a given planet, he rolls a 1d10 to determine the planet's environment. There's the environment table. He must choose the composition of his initial landing party before he determines which encounters will initially occur. The player may send down as many exploring teams as his teleporter units. The player sets aside the crew team counters in the exploring party and then determines which encounters will occur. Players will generally have 3 encounters on a planet. If the planet has a previously assigned mission, the player will determine 2 additional encounters. The encounters are determined by rolling 1d20, consulting planetary encounter table for the appropriate planetary environment. In addition to the 3 encounters determined above, players may choose to attempt a 4th encounter, prospecting for fuel to replenish their ship's energy reserve. Fuel prospecting may be done on any environment and is done solely at the player's option. There are several different types of encounters the exploring party may have. Geologic features, plant species, animal species, or exotic diseases may be encountered. The player may assign some of the exploring teams to these encounters. Successful resolution of the encounters gains victory points. There are also a variety of disasters which may befall a party. Some disasters are specific to the type of environment. In addition, a roll of 20 in any environment indicates a cataclysm. The player would then re-roll on the cataclysm table to determine which cataclysm occurred. Disasters will affect the activities of teams in other encounters. Only one disaster may occur on a planet. The player may assign the exploring teams to the encounters. Assignments are made by placing the team encounters in the encounter boxes on planetary display. A player may only assign military teams or the appropriate special teams to the encounter. Specialty teams are as follows: geology team, plant, botany team, herbivore, carnivore, animal physiology team, sentient contact team, disease, medical team, fuel prospecting, fuel engineering team, disturbance, specialty team, given by mission. Military teams do not have a specialty encounter except a disturbance related to them, but may be assigned to any encounters. This gives them greater flexibility of assignment. They are basically red shirts. Navigation, damage control, and fire control teams have no special encounter except a disturbance related to them and cannot be assigned to any other encounter. Players may assign their teams in any number of combinations within the above limits. Players must assign at least one team to each encounter. If a player cannot or chooses not to assign a team to a given encounter, he forfeits the encounter and loses VPs equal to the value of the encounter. Once determined, encounters for a given player on a given planet are not changed. The same encounters continue until resolved or forfeited. Once the teams have been assigned, the player proceeds with attempting to resolve the encounters. Each turn, the effects of disasters are determined first, then disease encounters are resolved. When a player successfully resolves an encounter, he gains a specified number of VPs. When he forfeits an encounter, he loses that specified number of VPs. A player must remain at a particular planet until he has resolved or forfeited all encounters on the planet. The player should keep track of how many turns he has spent on a given planet, as some of the encounters provide a bonus toward resolution with increasing time spent investigating the encounter. On any subsequent turn that a player is continuing his exploration of a given planet, he may reassign his teams between encounters and may send substitutions of teams from the ship's crew to replace any losses incurred and to substitute more appropriate specialty teams. Teams may be freely exchanged as long as the total number of teams left on the planet do not exceed the teleport capacity. Missions. There are two types of missions that may be assigned to a planet: disturbances and investigations. If a mission is assigned, only 2 other encounters will be randomly determined. Investigation missions are conducted exactly as standard encounters of a given type, except that an investigation is worth 15 VPs. A given planet will have the same mission for all players. When the first player doing so completes a mission, the mission is nullified for all the players. If another player subsequently lands on the planet, he just determines 2 encounters. If another player is on the same planet at the same time, attempting to solve the same mission, he must abandon the mission. Colonies, optional rule. Some of the missions involve resolving disturbances on previously established colonies. On a colony, the player may add 1 to the die roll used for any encounter other than the disturbance to reflect these local guides. In addition, for any plant encounter, the player may refer to a severe other turn chart to determine losses rather than the more severe first turn chart. The VP value of an encounter on a colony is lowered by 1, except for the disturbance. Then here's the planetary encounter table. Certain disasters are specific to the type of environment. A roll of 1d20 for planet disasters in any environment indicates that a cataclysm has occurred, and a 1d20 is rolled on the cataclysm table to determine which cataclysm occurs. Disaster encounters are marked with asterisks on the encounter tables. The effects of any disaster are applied each turn before resolving any other encounters. Avalanche, specific for the mountain environment. The same procedure is used for lava flow on volcanic planets, except for determining the effective losses on teams. There's a chance that some of the exploring teams will encounter an avalanche or lava flow. Each turn the player rolls 2d6. If the roll is greater than or equal to the number of the teams he has on the planet, they are safe. If he rolls less than the number of teams present on the planet, they will incur losses 1d20. They will incur losses. 1d20 is rolled on the loss table below to determine the number of teams lost. Shown here. The player may choose which teams will be lost from among those on the planet. The player rolls 1d6 for each team to be lost to determine the effect as follows. Shown here. Avalanche 1-2, team eliminated. 3-6, incapacitated for the rolled number of turns. Lava flow 1-2, team eliminated. 3-6, incapacitated for the rolled number of turns. Drought, specific for the desert environment. Severe water shortage requires extra support from the ship to the exploring party. The player must pay 1 energy unit per turn on the planet per turn. Ice storm, specific to the glacier environment. Spherical limits exposure. The player must decide before each turn to either withhold half of the teams rounded up on the planet from being assigned to an encounter, or he must pay 1 energy unit per team per turn in additional support. Radiation, specific for the radiant environment. The sphere radiation limits allowable exposure. The player must withhold half, rounded up, of all teams present on the planet from encounters. Here's the cataclysm table. Earthquake is the same procedure as avalanche. Heavy gravity. Specialty team bonus for all specialty teams is reduced from +2 to +1 for this planet. Ion storm. The player is limited to exchanging and reinforcing only 1 team per turn with the resources of the ship's crew. Sonic storm. The player must add 4 to his loss die roll in animal encounters and to the combat die roll in sentient encounters. The player must subtract 2 from the die roll for the befriend option in all animal and sentient encounters. Severe weather. The same procedures as outlined under Ice Storm. Trader, pirates, enemy vessel is the same procedure as the stellar encounters for the same name. Cataclysms or other disasters only affect the player who rolls them. Disease encounters. Disease encounters should be resolved first each turn. Disease may affect other teams on the planet. Only medical and military teams may be assigned to the disease encounter. Each turn, the player may try to cure the disease by rolling 1d20 on the cure table. If the score is greater than or equal to the score indicated, the disease has been cured. For each successive turn spent studying the disease, the chance for cure increases. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each medical team assigned to the disease. Curing a disease earns 10 victory points. Each turn, until the disease is cured, the die is rolled for losses after the roll for the cure. The lost die roll is made even if no teams are assigned to the disease encounter. The disease encounter may not be forfeited. The effects of loss still apply. If the disease has not been cured by the 5th consecutive turn of the planet, the player loses 10 VPs and cannot try to cure the disease any longer. Effects of the disease remain as long as any teams remain on the planet. Losses are determined by rolling 1d20 and consulting the disease loss table, shown here. The player may choose which teams are to be lost from the teams present on the planet, not just those assigned to the disease encounter. Optional rules, specialty teams operating in the disease environment, these at lower efficiency. Talks about details of that. Disturbances. Disturbances may occur as an initial mission or as a result of a major event at home starbase. Same procedure is used in both cases, except that the home starbase disturbance will be the only encounter. Only military teams or the specialty teams appropriate to the disaster may be assigned. Each turn, the player may try to resolve the disturbance by rolling 1d20 and consulting the resolution table. If his roll is greater than or equal to the score indicated, the disturbance has been successfully resolved. With each successive turn spent on the disturbance, the chance for a successful resolution increases. The player may add 2 to the die roll for each appropriate specialty team assigned to disturbance. Successfully resolving a disturbance is worth 15 VPs. If a player fails to resolve a disturbance after the 5th consecutive turn, he must forfeit the encounter and loses 15 VPs. If more than one player is simultaneously trying to resolve a disturbance, the first one to do so successfully earns 2 VPs. Each turn after the roll for resolution, the player must determine if the team's investigating disturbance sustain any losses. Loss table A, shown there, is used when disturbance applies to navigation, fire control, damage control, fuel engineering, or body teams. Loss table B is used when the disturbance applies to military, civilian contact, medical, geology, or animal physiology teams, and generally indicates higher losses. Loss results require the usual 1d6 casualty roll. Geologic Encounters. Geologic Encounters involve prospecting for precious minerals. Only geology or military teams may be assigned to investigate a geological encounter. Each turn a player is investigating a geologic encounter. He may roll to see if he has discovered the mineral deposits. The table used depends on the planetary environment. Table A is used for grassland, forest, jungle, and swamp environments. Table B is used for mountain, desert, glacier, and aquatic environments. Table C is used for radiated and volcanic environments. If the player rolls greater than or equal to the number indicated on the table, he has found the mineral deposits and has successfully resolved the encounter. Each successive turn spent on a geologic encounter improves the chances of success. The player may add 2 to the die roll for each geology team that has been assigned to the encounter. After rolling for resolution of the encounter, the player must then roll to determine if his teams have sustained any losses while investigating the geologic encounter. The loss table used is the same as the resolution table, depending upon the planetary environment. Results from the loss table require the usual casualty roll. When the player successfully resolves a geologic encounter or has to forfeit, he then determines the VP value. The player rolls 2d6 for the VP of the encounter. Planet encounters. Only botany and military teams may be assigned to a planet encounter. Plant encounters. Only botany and military teams may be assigned to plant encounters. On the first turn a plant is encountered, the player determines what type of plant is encountered by rolling 1d6. The plant modifiers shown below. The roll is modified and the planetary environment as follows: -1 for grassland, +1 for desert, swamp, mountain, glacier, radiated, or volcanic. Each turn a player is studying plant species, rolls 1d20 to see if his study has been successful. The chance for success depends upon the planet modifier. If his roll is greater than or equal to the score indicated, he has studied the planet successfully and gains the VP value. The chance for success increases with each successive turn spent studying the planet. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each botany team assigned to the encounter. Unless the modifier is sentient, in this case only, sentient teams may be assigned to the planet encounter. There is no bonus for the botany teams, but there is a +2 bonus for the sentient contact team assigned to the sentient planet encounter. If the planet modifier is food crop, nutritious, or sentient, there is no risk or loss to the studying teams. If the modifier is poisonous, medical, or aggressive, investigating teams must determine if they suffer any losses. After rolling for the study of the planet, the player must roll in the appropriate loss table. On the first turn of the planet studied, the player consults the table labeled first turn. It turns after the first turn, use the other loss column. Loss results are enrolled in the appropriate loss table and followed by the usual roll for casualties. This is made on 1d6, 1 team eliminated, 2d6 team incapacitated for the number that's rolled for the number of turns. Place the incapacitated team counters on turn record track. For the turn they will return to action. Note that poisonous plants add a modifier of -1 to the casualty effect of the 1d6. Food, crops, sentient, and medicinal plants are worth 6 VPs if studied successfully. Nutritious, poisonous, and aggressive plants are worth 5 VPs. Animal encounters, herbivores, and carnivores. Only animal physiology or military teams may be assigned to an animal encounter. When resolving an animal encounter, a player has a choice of the 4 options trying to study the animal successfully. The 4 options are, in order of increasing hostility towards the animal: befriend, trap, chase, hunt, and hunt. Each turn, the player must choose one of these 4 options. If a particular option fails in one turn, the player may try that option again on subsequent, or may choose a different option. However, the player may not choose an option that is less hostile. There are 10 distinct modifiers for each animal, herbivore and carnivore. Likelihood for a particular option succeeding depends on the type of animal and its modifier. While many animal species have more than one trait in life, only the dominant modifier to the animal's behavior is considered. When an animal is first contacted, the player must choose his initial option before knowing what the modifier will be. Knowing only that the animal is a herbivore or carnivore, the player chooses the option, rolls 1d10 and the appropriate modifier chart, shown there. Each turn the player may try to study the animal using one of the 4 options. He may roll 1d20 to determine if the option was successful, as well as greater than or equal to the score indicated on the animal encounter chart. For that type of animal and option chosen, he has succeeded. There is no bonus for successive turns spent on the encounter. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each animal physiology team engaged, unless the modifier is sentient. In this case, only the 2-point bonus is applied for sentient contact teams assigned to the encounter. Each turn, after rolling for the option to study the animal, the player must determine if the investigating teams suffer any losses. The player rolls 1d20 on the herbivore or carnivore loss chart table for the option chosen. The modifier of the animal affects the loss die roll in 4 cases, shown here: aggressive carnivore to small herbivore, large herbivore, carnivore, passive herbivore. Sentient encounters. Sentients are highly intelligent species which have evolved with communication skills and organized societies. Only sentient contact military teams may be assigned to a sentient encounter. The key characteristic of a sentient race is its technical development. Tech levels range from 1 to 10, with Earth historical equivalents listed below, shown here. When a sentient race is first contacted, the player determines their apparent tech level by rolling 1d10. The player must then choose his initial contact option, see below. The player then rolls 1d20 for the tech level modifier to determine the actual tech level of the race. The apparent tech level is a first impression, which may or may not be accurate. If the modifier calls for a level lower than 1, treat as 1. If it calls for a level higher than 10, treat as 10. It's a tech level modifier. The player has 4 options for means to contact sentients. 4 options in order of increasing hostility are befriend, bribe, show of science, and show of force. If a particular option is unsuccessful on one turn, it may be tried again on a subsequent turn, or another option may be chosen. However, a player may not choose an option less hostile than the previously tried. Each turn, the player may try to contact the sentients by rolling 1d20 and consulting the sentient encounter table appropriate to the tech level and the option chosen. If the roll is greater than or equal to the score indicated, successful contact has been made. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each sentient contact team assigned to the encounter. Each turn after rolling for contact, the player must determine whether or not his attempt has resulted in combat. The player rolls 1d20 and consults the sentient contact table for the option chosen. If combat does occur, the losses suffered by the player are based on the tech level of sentience. Each team so loss is rolled for, as usual, with 1d6, where 1 is team eliminated, 2d6 team incapacitated for the rolled number of turns. Regardless of combat, there is no penalty for attempting contact again. Losses are the only penalty for combat. There is no separate option table for the bribe option. Instead, the befriend table is used. The player must expend 1 energy unit per tech level to produce a die roll modifier of +1 to a maximum of +5 for 5 times the tech level in energy units expended. Energy units spent on gifts are expended whether or not the option succeeds. If a sentient race is successfully contacted, the player earns VPs equal to 5 plus the tech level of the race. Optional rule: if a sentient race is successfully contacted, they will provide guides which will help in resolving other encounters on the planet. The player may add 1 to the die roll for resolving all their encounters on the planet from the point of successful contact on. And then fuel prospecting. In addition to the 3 usual encounters on the planet, the player may, as option, choose a 4th, prospecting for fuel. Fuel prospecting may be performed in any planetary environment, or in an asteroid belt as the only encounter. Only fuel engineering or military teams may be assigned to fuel prospecting. Each turn, the player may try to find fuel by rolling 1d20. The table used depends upon the planetary environment as follows. Team A, grasslands, forest, jungle, swamp. Team B, Table B, mountain, desert, glacier, aquatic. Table C, radiated, volcanic, asteroid belt. If the player throws greater than or equal to the score indicated on the table, the player has found fuel. For each successive turn spent looking for fuel, the chance for success increases. The player may add 2 to his die roll for each fuel engineering team assigned to this encounter. After rolling to find fuel each turn, the player must then roll to determine if the team searching have suffered any losses. The loss table used A, B, or C depends upon the environment. For each team lost on the table, 1d6 is rolled in the usual fashion to determine casualties. 1, team eliminated, 2d6, team incapacitated for the number rolled. When a player has successfully prospected for fuel, the amount of fuel found is determined as follows, depending on the environment. Table B, 1d6 times 5 energy units. B, 2d6 times 5. Table C, 3d6 times 5. The energy fuel found is automatically added to the ship's store of fuel energy reserve. A player may repeatedly search for fuel on the same planet. However, each time he searches for fuel again, he must start over again using the first term column of the prospecting table. Then the endgame and notes, victory conditions, summary of VP score as follows. VP scored an encounter successfully resolved, disturbance 15, Unusual activity 15. Plant 5 or 7. Herbivore 5. Carnivore 7. Sentience 5. Plus 1 VP per tech level. Geologic 1d6. Disease 10. Pirates 10. Sanguine Vessel 5 VPs for battlecruisers, 10 for battleship, 15 for dreadnought. VPs may be lost as follows. If they're forfeited, you lose the VP shown. And then also, if you break off combat, you can lose VPs. The time limit for the standard game is 20 turns. For each turn, before time expires, the player completes his mission, visiting all 4 planets and returning to a starbase. The player earns 5 bonus VPs. For each turn after the time is expired that the player used to complete his mission, he loses 2 VPs. When playing with more than 1 player, players who complete their mission receive a 5 VP bonus per player per turn. For each other player who has not yet completed his mission. When playing with more than 1 player, the highest score of VPs wins. In a solitaire version of play, the players may rate themselves as follows: less than 50, you are reassigned, up to 101 plus, you are recommended for promotion, then captain of the ship. Then you can do an optional thing where you basically do several games in sequence and you get more experience for being a captain. And then that's the rules, and then check out part 1 where I show the play and review. Thanks.